yeah, this movie is proof as to why you should never, ever, ever talk to strangers. The Black Phone is a new horror movie that is coming out on Friday, directed by Scott Derrickson, co-written by him and C. Robert Cargill. They both have made Sinister, Deliver Us from Evil. Derrickson directed 2016's Doctor Strange. The Black Phone takes place in 1978, and Finney Shaw, a shy but clever 13-year-old boy, is abducted by a sadistic killer and trapped in a soundproof basement, where screaming is of little use. When a disconnected phone on the wall begins to ring, Finney discovers that he can hear the voices of the killer's previous victims, and they are dead set on making sure that what happened to them doesn't happen to Finney. I've enjoyed some of Scott Derrickson's previous films. I thought he did a really good job with the first Doctor Strange. Wanted to see what he was going to do with Doctor Strange 2, but unfortunately creative differences got in the way, but that's fine. I still really like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. And Sinister is like one of the scariest things I've ever seen. Not a single scene in that movie will never not terrify me. That fucking lawnmower scene. Whew, getting the chills thinking about it. Even though I own it on Blu-ray, I do think Deliver Us from Evil is pretty awful. It's boring. That was a blind buy back in the day, and I'm not a proud owner of that on Blu-ray. I can happily say that I thought The Black Phone was a major step up from that film, his previous horror effort. I believe Doctor Strange was his last movie before this, because he was still tied in his contractual obligations with Marvel, and he was getting ready to gear up for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and and as I said, obviously there were some creative differences there that caused him to leave that project and allowed him to make this film. And what I like so much about The Black Phone is that it relies really a lot on child performances, and child performances really get criticized in films. Back in the day, it was very prominent. I would say back in the 90s, early 2000s, but it's still a huge thing where we can just sit back and be like, oh yeah, that kid sucked. Don't ever cast them in anything again. But this movie really lives and dies on the performances of the child actors. And Madeline McGraw, Mason Thames, I think their names are, really fucking good. Man, they brought it. Madeline McGraw brought some unexpected humor to her character. This character is the sister of Mason Thames' character, Finney, and she's like this religious nut, and there's a couple of funny scenes. She's like praying and she's like, Jesus, where are you? What the fuck did you do? Like, she's literally saying fuck to Jesus Christ. I don't know, a whole theater died. But this is essentially their movie. This movie lives and dies with those characters and the performances of these actors, and they really pull it off. I thought that they were very convincing in their roles. Even if they were just giving mediocre performances, I probably wouldn't criticize them too much. They're children, just doing what they're told to do. It's like doing a school project and having to follow every simple instruction that your teacher sets out for you, I guess. But what also really helps this movie is that it's a very tension-filled and atmospheric ride. It's a bit of a slow burn at some points. For extended periods of this movie, it's really gonna feel like that nothing is really progressing. It's very isolated. It's very contained. You're in a room for much of the movie without any connections to the outside world, and you're learning a little bit more about what's going on with Finney and this black phone that keeps ringing in this room. That's what made this movie intriguing. That's what made it more suspenseful for me. I thought almost at any second Ethan Hawke as the grabber, I thought was going to pop up in almost any scene. You can literally pinpoint every scene in this movie and say, he's going to pop up here, he's going to pop up here, he's going to pop up here. But the movie subverts your expectations like that, and gratefully so. Because if this was as predictable as that, I don't think I would have had as much fun with this movie, and I think it would have taken away from that suspense and the atmosphere that this movie was setting up. You just have this really cold, damp feeling. Just watching this kid hang out in this room trying to craft his escape plan while Ethan Hawke is up a staircase. And other than the child actors, I think the big MVP of this movie is Ethan Hawke. He's behind a mask for, I would say, about 90% of the runtime, and being behind a mask isn't easy. You can't see the actor's facial expressions. There's parts where he has the bottom of the mask and you can see his eyes. There's times where his whole face is covered by a mask. There's even a time where only the top half of his face is covered by a mask and you can see his mouth. Makes it even that much more creepy. But Ethan Hawke does a lot of interesting things with this character, even if the Grabber isn't as fleshed out of a character as he could be. We don't really understand why he's doing what he's doing. But what made the character so interesting to me was Ethan Hawke's performance and how he portrayed this character anytime he was wearing a different variation of a mask. There would be different emotional masks that he would wear, and he would slightly tweak his voice in certain scenes to make himself sound more terrifying or to make himself sound a little bit more sympathetic. It just made that character so much more unsettling than he already had been that it really didn't bother me that we didn't learn much about what made the Grabber start kidnapping all these kids in the neighborhood and bringing them into his basement. Hawke's performance just makes it feel so much more gnarly. There is an aspect of the script that I wish was explored a little bit more. There's something that happens with this black phone. As I said, there's ways that Finney can communicate with the previous victims, and I appreciated the movie for taking this approach in showing these previous victims communicating with Finney, and I said, ooh, that's a good idea. They're doing the whole show don't tell rule, and we're going to find out what actually happens later on as to how he can communicate with these previous victims. That's going to be the plot twist of the movie, but unfortunately, it really didn't feel like it was connected to anything. It's really up for interpretation, I think. I'm not 100% sure if it's related to something with Finney's sister. At least I didn't see it that way. I think other people might see it that way. It was something that felt like it went unexplained, and it was something that was such a prominent aspect of the script and the story that was trying to be told that not telling the audience exactly what was happening there and how Finney could communicate with these dead victims of the Grabber left holes in the script for me. It didn't fully follow through on the promise that we were going to get an explanation for that. The Black Phone is definitely a well-directed movie. There are some great shots in here, some lingering shots that zoom in at a specific point to make it even more terrifying. There are some absolute fucking jump scares. Man, that was loud. Did not expect anything like that to happen in this movie. I expected something more along the lines of Sinister, where it was just going to be kind of like freak out moments and disturb you to the core, but it was actual jump scares, and they were pretty effective. I just wish that that one aspect of the script didn't go unexplained. I'm going to say I think it's worth watching with 3/4 worth of a bucket of popcorn. So guys, have you seen The Black Phone? If you have, drop me some feedback in the comment section below as to what you thought of the movie. I will leave my link to my website in the description below as well. You guys are the best. Thank you for watching. My name is Alex Madden, and I'll see you at the movies somewhere.